You're listening to the Chad Easty Show on demand. Good for you. Now download the KFYO app and listen live weekday afternoons, 5 to 7 p.m. Central.
Broadcasting from the great state of Texas, this is the Chad Hasty Show. News and views with a Lone Star perspective. You can sound off during the show by sending Chad a text at 806-680-2790. That's 806-680-2790. Or call in at 1-800-687-0790. Now, here's Chad Hasty.
Good evening, Lubbock, Amarillo, Abilene, Wichita Falls, Midland, Odessa, Dallas, Fort Worth, down in Houston, over in El Paso, and anywhere else, inside or outside the great state of Texas, wherever you may be listening on this Monday. Welcome in to the Chad Easty Show. Glad to have you with us here on the program today as we have quite a bit to get into, a lot of issues to cover on the show today. Of course, we want to hear from you on all the big topics of the day, any of the issues that you may want to sound off on. You can do that. Send us a message on the text line 806-680-2790. That's 806-680-2790. You can send in your thoughts on the text line. You can also give us a call at 1-800-687-0790. Hopefully you had a good weekend. Nick, the first voice you hear from when you dial in today, and yes, he's still rocking those sweaters, man. I'm telling you, even though it was like in the mid-70s here. It's nice weather, beautiful weather that we're having. I think later on in the week it's supposed to get a little chilly once again into the 50s and a little bit of rain perhaps, but it's pretty nice still this week. Looking for some good weather around the state. Wildfire weather still in our Panhandle region in the state, so that's something to be on the lookout for. But hopefully you had a good weekend. Nick, did you have a good week? Did you accomplish anything over the weekend? Did you do anything big over the weekend? No, you didn't do anything at all. Nothing at all. You didn't. Okay. See, I cleaned out the garage this weekend. That was my big accomplishment. It cleaned out the garage and then got very excited by going, here's different shelving and storage things that I could put up around the garage. That's what happens when you get over 40 and you start looking around and going, oh yeah, I could get this organization done over here in the garage. That's an exciting Saturday.
So I hope that when I'm over 40, I will reach that peak. I also hope I don't grow out of my sweaters.
Yeah, I hope not. I hope not. Yeah,
that would be an issue. It just dawned on me as I forget just about every single week what I did. We had family over.
Oh, that's good.
Over the weekend, so we grilled a little, made some kebabs.
Oh, very nice.
One night, and then did homemade chicken. Chicken Parmesan.
Okay.
Homemade chicken Parmesan, which is also very good.
Yes.
And that was pretty much it. We had family and we ate.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that.
Is there any better weekend?
No, that's a great weekend right there. Family eating. It's all good. I watched old movies. And when I say old, 90s era movie. Watched a couple of 90s era movies, and like I said, just fix stuff up around the. I guess the spring cleaning and spring fixing, if you will, of the house, getting some of that stuff done. So that was my big weekend, and then at one point sitting down and going, yeah, that was exciting, cleaning out the garage. But more fun than watching the Oscars, which we did not do. My mom was funny. I guess my mom was watching the Oscars last night. I didn't even know they were on until I saw it on social media. I had no idea. But my mom texted me asking, are you all watching? Because apparently there was a dog. There was a dog on the Oscars. And I was like, no, I didn't. We haven't seen an award show in many years. So, no, did not watch the Oscars. I have seen some clips from the award show last night, but no, did not see any of that. Again, I'd rather clean out the garage than watch the Oscars, the Academy Awards, where the celebrities will just pat each other on the back for movies. Maybe a lot of movies you haven't seen before. Oppenheimer was good. I did see Oppenheimer, and I heard that one won big at the Oscars. But other than that, no, did not watch any of the Oscars. Did not see any of that. I'm sure there are different reports out on social media if you want to get an update on what happened at the Academy Awards. We've got a lot to get into here on the program today. Yesterday, over the weekend, President Joe Biden, I told you that the old man had no idea what he was saying when he used the word illegal. Over the weekend, he apologized. He apologized for using the word illegal when talking about the illegal immigrant who murdered a Georgia college student. He was very upset with himself that he had mentioned the word illegal because, as you know, Democrats, well, they're very concerned about language, and they do not want anyone to think that someone can be here in the country illegally. And the Democrats much more outraged by Biden's use of the word illegal than they were the actual crime that took place. Yeah. You didn't hear Democrats coast to coast, border to border, get upset about the actual murder of Laken Riley. But when Joe said the word illegal, well, then they threw their hands up in the air. They were just very upset at the dehumanizing that word does, according to now the fact that the illegal had murdered a college student and so badly disfigured her in her skull that she was barely recognizable. That did not outrage the left. That did not outrage Joe Biden. That did not outrage the Democrats in the United States. But the word illegal is the thing that outraged the Democrats. That is just a little nugget for you to remember come this November. That is just a little nugget for everybody to remember what really makes the Democrats upset. What really gets them upset. It's the word illegal and not the actual crimes being committed by these people who should not be here in the first place. So we've got that to talk about on the program today. We've got some local headlines as well that we'll be getting into throughout the show today. Scott Braddock will join us coming up at 6:05. We also have a little bit of news when it comes to the enthusiasm gap in that Senate race between Ted Cruz and Colin Allred. Story out of WFAA that we'll be talking about as well. So we've got all of that to get into, your phone calls, your text messages, and much more throughout the program today. Again, you can text in at 806-680-2790. You can also give us a call at 1-800-687-0790. Of course, we have the big time change as well. That means when we leave here, it'll be light outside. But one of the questions that we ask you, do you prefer the daylight saving time? Do you prefer this time of year where you have light at the end of the day? And then what is it? What do you do with those extra hours of daylight? The extra hours at the end of the day. They're not really extra hours, but you know what I mean. The hours of daylight that you have in the evening. What do you like to do with those hours? For a lot of us, it's breaking the grill out. Bring the grill outside. You got a little bit longer to grill. Maybe it's taking the kids to the park. Maybe it's going on walks. Maybe it's doing whatever. Yeah, just sitting out on the patio. What do you enjoy doing this time of year when you have a little bit of extra light out there at the end of the day? You can text in 806-680-2790. Give us a call as well, 1-800-687-0790. Texter saying 2001 A Space Odyssey last week. Feel like I need a walker now. Yeah, you go back and you watch some of these movies that came out. Not even it wasn't a long time ago for us. It may not be a long time ago for you, but when looking at it, yeah, it may be a movie that did come out a long time ago, and you watch it and you go, oh man, this is an old movie now, and then you kind of look around, you take pause, and you go, I'm kind of old now. I'm kind of getting older. When did this happen? This isn't fun. Then you just turn the movie off, decide to watch something else. 806-680-2790. When we come back, your phone calls, your text messages, and much more on the Chad Hasty Show.
The Chad Hasty Show can be heard all over West Texas, weekdays from 5 to 7 p.m. Tune in on News Talk 95.1 and 790 KFYO in Lubbock, News Talk 940 in Amarillo, News Talk 94.7 and 1470 KYYW in Abilene, and in Wichita Falls on News Talk 96.3 and 1290. The Chad Hasty Show. Make it a part of your drive home, weekdays from 5 to 7 p.m.
On the road with Mr. Rhodes.
Hey, here's a shocker. Cars are bigger than people. So if you're behind the wheel, be careful. Those crosswalk stripes, they aren't left over from National Painted Street like a zebra day. They mean you need to stop for people in crosswalks and yield the right of way when turning at intersections. And no looking at phones, photos, texts, emails, or holding your jeans or where that nickel fell. Oh, and please slow down. Sound advice mixed in with professional sound effects.
Be safe, drive smart. A message from TxDOT.
For Hannity, Hasty, and Barry, News Talk KFYO.
All right, welcome back to the Chad Hasty Show. Appreciate you being out there today. You can send in your thoughts on the text line at 806-680-2790. Texter saying leave the time at the standard time for all time. Let's see. Daylight saving time has outlived the reason it was set in place to begin with. Stop the madness. Leave our clocks alone. Period. Turn it back to standard time first weekend in October and leave it. Another texter says they like to take the grandkids fishing with the extra time in the evening. Ruckus, there we go. Love being able to go fishing after work. And from Ruckus, got a couple of fishing text in there. Texter, let's see. Another texter says they prefer the daylight saving time. Love to have the extra daylight at the end of the day. Not sure why, just like to have it. It's a nice little option. Hey guys, it's Elizabeth in Lubbock. Mostly just writing check-in. Do I prefer daylight saving time? I really don't care. It's just arbitrary anyway. I think we should pick one and stick with it year-round. When I lived in Arizona, we all ridiculed people who switched their clocks for no apparent reason. I'm with you. I think we should just pick a time, be happy with it. Of course, we'd all fight like cats and dogs over which time to be on. So it'll probably never happen yet. It'll probably never happen where we change time because not everyone will agree. You'll have hurt feelings. You'll have lawmakers called rhinos because they choose the either standard time or daylight saving time. One of them will be the Democrat time. The other will be labeled the conservative time. Who knows? I don't know. Just taking a wild guess. One of what the arguments could be. House GOP leaders tearing up Biden's 7.3. If it was 3.7, that might not be too bad. New $7.3 trillion budget proposal, calling it reckless. House Republican leaders blasting Biden's proposed plan for how to fund the government in fiscal year 2025. Put the price tag of Biden's proposed budget, yet another glaring reminder of this administration's insatiable appetite for reckless spending and the Democrats' disregard for fiscal responsibility. Biden's budget doesn't just miss the mark. It's a roadmap to accelerate America's decline. Read a joint statement by House Speaker Mike Johnson, Majority Leader Steve Scalise, Majority Whip Tom Emmer, and GOP Conference Chair Elise Stefanik. While hardworking Americans struggle with crushing inflation and mounting national debt, the president would increase their pain to spend trillions of additional taxpayer dollars to advance his left-wing agenda. The U.S. national debt currently at just over $34.5 trillion, according to the U.S. debt clock. Biden's $7.3 trillion budget plan, which he unveiled today, includes proposals to hike taxes on corporations and also high-income households. It lays out roughly $5 trillion in tax increases overall, which the White House said would be split evenly between corporations and the top 2%. It also aims to push forward progressive policies like dedicating $8 billion over 10 years to the American Climate Corps and $3 billion for the Green Climate Fund, which helps developing countries fight climate change. Why should we spend anything on other countries fighting climate change? What a waste of money. What an absolute waste of money. And from many different angles, an absolute waste of money. But we're gonna give a hand over $3 billion to third world countries. By the way, so many of those third world countries, their people are coming over here illegally and just crossing through. But we're going to give these third world countries $3 billion to fight climate change, whatever the hell that means and looks like. And then you have $8 billion over 10 years for the American Climate Corps. Budget proposal also includes $1.8 billion towards boosting development programs in STEM fields and an emphasis on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Of course it does. Budget has no chance of passing the Republican-controlled House. However, it's a significant part of the president's pitch to voters as he seeks to win another term in November. House Republicans advanced their own budget last week, led by Budget Committee Chairman Jody Arrington, aimed at cutting $14 trillion in federal spending over 10 years by slashing federal benefits and social programs, among other areas. It also aims to reduce taxes and roll back Biden's green energy subsidies. Great. Do it. Of course, they can't because they don't have any cooperation in the Senate, and they obviously have Biden in the White House. This is why it's important to elect Republicans, folks. Even if you have to hold your nose sometimes, even if you have to go, I don't like that Republican. I don't like Donald Trump. I don't like, there is an absolute difference between Republicans and Democrats. And you just have to look at some of these budgets to see why. Mike in Lubbock saying that he agrees with Elizabeth. Pick one, pick a time, stay there. Let's see. I'm currently an officer for TDCJ. Our prisons are 93% capped, largest in state history. We can barely handle it now. What do you think the state's going to do when this tidal wave of criminals hits our prisons and judicial systems? Well, it's not going to be good. And what you're probably going to see in many of these urban areas and Democrat-controlled areas is you'll have DAs that just continue not to prosecute criminals. (806-680-2790). You can get in on the text line. Daylight saving time is like government taking a blanket, cutting 6 inches off one end, sewing it on the other end, then telling everyone you have a longer blanket. From James in Lubbock. That is true. Yeah. I like how they say you have extra time. You don't really. I guess if you're not awake at 7 a.m., I don't know, woke up this morning, looked out, it was dark out there. Sun then started coming up. It's still, still get to see a nice little sunrise. I guess I get to see the sunrise and the sunset. That's the difference. I get to see both now. That's nice. 806-680-2790. Robert in the 401 saying, unfortunately, leaving for work before dawn and at home at dusk, if I'm lucky, is a normal day for me. As a single father of 2 girls, yes, I'm drowning in estrogen ocean. I got to make sure they have a decent childhood. Good for you, Robert. Keep on the hard work. It's a good thing. 806-680-2790. Yeah, this budget put forward by Biden. And by the way, there's a lot more craziness to it than just what we read. The fortunate part is that it has no chance whatsoever, no chance whatsoever of passing. But it does show why it's important to get Republicans elected, elect Republicans in the House, win the Senate, win the White House. So very, very, very important if we're going to start putting this thing back together here in the U.S. When we come back, your phone calls, your text messages, also going to be joined by a couple of guests when we return on the Chad Hasty Show.
Call in to the Chad Hasty Show at 1-800-687-0790. The Chad Hasty Show, broadcasting on the Texas Town Square Media Network.
We live Texas. We breathe Texas. The landmarks, the swagger, and the lore make us who we are. We devour the tastes and the smells of our state. You just might say there's something in the air. So do your part to help protect it. Keep your tires at the correct pressure and avoid idling at drive-thrus. Both help reduce emissions. For tips, visit drivecleantexas.org. Drive Clean Texas. Live and breathe it. Brought to you by TxDOT.
I answered the call. Together, we fought for our nation and its people. And even though I no longer wear the uniform, I am still a Marine. My service has come full circle. I will continue to support my country and my community. Then and now, Semper Fidelis remains my promise. Always faithful, always Marine.
The news and talk of West Texas. News Talk 95.1 and 790 KFYO. Chad Hasty, talking the news. At the start, middle, and end of your drive home, and when news breaks. This is the Chad Hasty Show.
All right, welcome back to the Chad Hasty Show. Appreciate you being out there today. Whether you're listening in Lubbock, Amarillo, Wichita Falls, Abilene, always good to have you tuning into the program. We've got a lot to get into as the program continues. But speaking of Amarillo, we've got a couple of guests who are in studio. One just coming in, literally just getting off the road and coming in from Amarillo. We've got Mark Lee Dixon and also Representative Dustin Burrows, both of whom in studio. Bring the mic a little bit closer to you there. Mark, how's it going?
Oh, it's going great.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us in studio. And Representative Burrows, always good to see you. You're looking relaxed.
Chad, appreciate you having me back. It's spring break for the boys, so everyone's just having a nice, good week.
Yeah, well, congratulations on your win, and of course, now you get to at least relax a little bit. At least take a week or two to relax a little bit. But we have you both in studio. Mark, you held I know you had a press conference earlier today. This dealing with some stuff that's going on in Amarillo, maybe throughout the state of Texas. Kind of go into detail. Tell folks what we're talking about today.
Well, so there's a facility in Amarillo, Texas called BioCycle, Encore Technology. And they are connected with a facility in Grand Prairie as well. And this organization has a history with working with the abortion facilities across the state of Texas and even across America. And so we ended up having just recently a driver from the Amarillo facility share with us that on his route, he picks up from a abortion facility in Wichita, Kansas, and brings the medical waste, quote unquote, back to Amarillo. And while we're doing some digging, we realized that this is something that is happening in California and Nevada and New Mexico. It is happening all over, and the returns, it's coming into Texas.
And this is something that ties into, the sanctuary cities for the unborn, and then also the abortion, so the abortion laws that we have in Texas, Representative Burrows.
Yeah, I mean, let's be clear. We're talking about bodies of babies. And in Texas, we're trying to create a culture of life. I mean, that's clearly what we want to do, and everybody wants to do, and try to both, love both. I heard this the other day. We want to love both the unborn and the mother, and we're trying to get that moving. And in 2017, that seems like a long time ago, we passed a bill that I thought was very important that provided dignity to these unborn babies and making sure that there was going to be some sort of burial, that they were treated not as medical waste but as human beings. And we even had the Catholic Conference of Bishops say, no matter what your religion, we will pay for this to make sure that it happens. And we passed it with overwhelming Republican support. And Mark is doing great work, fantastic work. And he brought this to my attention, and we realized there's a huge loophole in the law. Huge loophole. It applies to facilities, medical facilities in Texas only. So when these are happening in Kansas and New Mexico, which I think those are the two states that's happening the most, and they're coming back here, there's no protections, no dignity given to those babies that are being transported that way, and we need to close it down. But it's going to be a long period, at least 18 months, before we can get through a session that bill could become law while this is still happening, and these people are profiteering off of this.
Mark, what is something, I guess, in that interim period, what is something that communities, I know, there's been push, to have, counties, come in and do, some of the sanctuary counties and other types of laws. What are some things that more Texas counties and cities can do to try and, I guess, prevent this from going on within that 18-month period?
Well, Troy Newman, who's the president of Operation Rescue, said it really well in an article for Texas Scorecard that was released today. He said that there are two areas that need to be closed up: the abortion trafficking of Texas residents to places like Wichita, Kansas, and then also the fetal remains issue. And he said abortion trafficking because the thing is, if you look at the majority of abortions that's happening in Wichita, Kansas, they're Texas residents. The majority of abortions happening are on Texas residents. And so Troy had a very frank conversation with me, and he said, Mark, it's you guys that are keeping the abortion facilities busy here in Kansas. And so anything that we can do to prevent the abortion trafficking of residents of our communities, that's one area. And then the second thing, of course, these businesses, these Texas businesses, these undertakers that are involved in helping out these baby murdering cartels in Kansas and New Mexico, we've got to rein them in. We've got to say, Texas has always been business friendly, and we can remain that way. But businesses like Biocycle and Encore Technology, they need to not be doing business with the abortion industry. So they can do everything else, but leave them out. And if the abortion industry is too much of their business, then they need to close down anyway. Have you talked to anyone at those facilities, and have they? What have they said to you about this about that part of the business? Well, we haven't had any warm, friendly conversations. I think they know what they're doing. Yeah. I saw a video just recently from some friends down with the San Antonio Family Association, and there was an Encore transport that was picking up some quote-unquote medical waste outside of an abortion facility. This was a few years back. And the guy there, the driver said that he was there to pick up the dead babies, and he flipped off the pro-lifer. So not warm, friendly communication from these people.
Yeah. And so you have this 18-month period to where where the state can really do something and get something passed and kind of close, like Representative Burrows said, the loophole here. When it comes to some of the counties, can they pass an ordinance? Can they get ahead of this? Maybe through the in the Panhandle and some other places. It sounds like it's mainly going through Amarillo is the main part. Is that right?
Oh, it's all over the place.
Is it all over?
The pathway from Amarillo to Wichita, Kansas, if some of those counties would just pass a county ordinance for the unincorporated parts, that could help tremendously. But we've also got to look at the Texas-New Mexico border. Palmer County is so important. Palmer County is right there by Clovis. In Clovis, there's actually a storage facility that Encore Biocycle uses. And so, passing an ordinance, county ordinance in Palmer County would be great. Here in Lubbock, the Lubbock County ordinance is just such a powerful ordinance, and they can look to that as a model. If they were to pass the Lubbock County ordinance in some of these counties across Texas, that would solve this problem.
Explain that a little bit for those who may not know. What does the Lubbock County ordinance do? What is it? What is it? How does it apply here?
So the Lubbock County ordinance prohibits abortion trafficking, and it prohibits the improper handling of fetal remains. And so it specifically addresses this problem of disposing of fetal remains from an abortion provider, such as one from outside of Texas, and it allows private citizens to file a lawsuit against those who are violating the ordinance, which in this case would be the waste management company. Mm-hmm. And so we saw how successful the Lubbock City ordinance was with the private enforcement mechanism. We saw how successful the Texas Heartbeat was with the private enforcement mechanism. And we really believe that these county ordinances will be just as strong and just as victorious as we have seen before.
Representative Burrows, what do you think about that idea?
So I think it's fantastic. I mean, the biggest threat to the pro-life movement in Texas is complacency. People who think that because Roe fell and Dobbs became the law of the land, that everything is just okay. Mm-hmm. And I also want to point out, Mark and a lot of pro-life people in this town, we are so supportive of the new laws we're putting in to protect it, but we're also supporting the mothers through the pregnancy crisis centers and making sure they get the care that they need. But when it comes to the laws that we talk about, and obviously that's where I am, the private cause of action, the private enforcement mechanism may be controversial to some, but I will tell you, it's what works. Texas has become the most pro-life state in the union, in my opinion, because with private enforcement, it allows every single person to go after the profiteers, the people making money off of this industry, and they're scared of it. They're scared of doing these things. So you're not having to wait on a district attorney, which you cannot count on in your big cities, or somebody else to actually bring these. This is what is working, and so I think it's such an important part of all of these ordinances. And by the way, I am so proud of the city of Lubbock, the people who showed up to vote for that, and our county commissioners who actually did this and led the way as a big county and big city doing this and basically saying to the rest of the world, we do value life.
Yeah. Mark, you're doing a great job out there. Your organization's doing a great job. I think it's telling when you see some of the negative articles about the abortion law and about some of the work that's being done, when the negative articles are always about more children are being born, and it's supposed to have a negative impact. It's supposed to have a negative connotation, and I always look at that and go, but doesn't that sound good? That for most people, isn't that a good thing? More children are born, and it just seems like a lot of articles and a lot of news writers out there they have a problem with that. It's amazing.
One thing that I see is that for so long we were living in America where Roe v. Wade was just something that we thought was could not be defeated. And then, of course, now we have seen Roe v. Wade defeated And people are wondering what's next. Well, what's next is the end of abortion in America, and Texas has to lead the way. And I told someone yesterday that at one time in our history, we had slave states and we had free states. And no one alive today would say that was a great idea. They would say it was a horrible idea, that we needed to be in America where slavery was abolished from coast to coast. The same can be said about abortion, that we do not need to live in an America where we have abortion states and non-abortion states. We need to live in an abortion-free America where unborn children made in the image of God are treated with dignity and respect, whether they live in California or New Mexico, wherever.
Can I add something to that? You said Texas needs to lead the way. I absolutely agree with you. And I think we're doing a good job on it. But West Texas has to lead Texas.
Absolutely.
This is the cultural heart of the state. We have wonderful people out here, and we have to lead Texas that direction so we can get there.
Representative Dustin Burrows, Mark Lee Dixon, I appreciate both of y'all coming in. Thanks for driving in from Amarillo, by the way, earlier. Didn't know if you were going to make it or not, but you did. Thank both of y'all for coming in. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chad.
Yep, you went when we come back, your phone calls, your text, and more.
The Titan of Texas Talk Radio, Chad Hasty.
Talking with newsmakers and about the issues that matter to you. The Chad Hasty Show, weekdays from 5 to 7 p.m. Chad's show is also digital with the Chad Hasty Show podcast. The Chad Hasty Show podcast can be downloaded on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, and the Radio On Demand page at kfyo.com. The Chad Hasty Show, all across Texas during your drive home, weekdays from 5 to 7 p.m.
There will be one less birthday party to celebrate today. One less coffee date with a friend today. One less family dinner today. Because there will be one less motorcycle rider on the road today. On average, a motorcyclist is killed on Texas roads every day. When you're behind the wheel, obey the speed limit and be extra careful at intersections. Let's start turning that one less into one more. Please share the road and look twice for motorcycles. There's a life riding on it. A message from TxDOT.
Weekend, Saturday nights at 7 on KFYO.
All right, welcome back to the Chad HD Show. Appreciate you being out there. Texter says, I don't know Burrows or Dixon, but I wish more leaders in the anti-abortion movement were like these dudes. You can send in your text at 806-680-2790. How about this for you, those of you in Amarillo? Oh, I love these type of events. Oh, these are always fun. Amarillo community invited to plan the future and discuss their city plan, Vision 2045. What do you want to see in Amarillo? This from the Amarillo Globe News. So what do you want to see in Amarillo? That's what the city has been asking residents since late 2022 for the city plan Vision 2045 and a draft version of the land use guidelines outlining 5 priorities now available online. Residents invited to provide more input on the city's future during open house events being held at different library locations over the next 2 weeks. According to the city, the plan is a template for the future of Amarillo, spanning multiple community priorities from transportation to housing to economic development. Now, folks, what a lot of this is, at least my experience in these type of Vision 2045, Vision 2050, Vision, and they're all like that. They're all basically named the same thing. City 2045, your vision, your future. And I remember when Lubbock did one of these, I can't even remember what the name of it was, but it was something like City Plan Vision 20 whatever. And it was I remember being in a one of these little focus groups, and they would tell people in the focus group, don't worry about money. Don't worry about how much it would cost. Just what do you want to see? And you'll get these people who go to these meetings and they act like it. they act like money means nothing, and they're going to go ahead and I want all these little dog parks here, and I want all these little splash pads over here. We got to have a water feature over here. Gotta have a new rail system that goes through here. Gotta have this. Gotta have that. And then somewhere down in the line, you get lawmakers and city lawmakers to start looking at it, going, "Oh well, I mean, this is what the people wanted." This is what you got to be very careful with these type of things. Since November of 2022, residents have been providing feedback on goals and objectives via digital surveys, community workshops, social media interaction, and more. Now the plan is just beginning to take shape. Who knows? It might be Vision 2045. They may not have it done till Vision 2040. Anyway, it's you can check it out online, amarillo.gov/city plan, if you want to see that. Be careful. This is how they come up with different ways to raise money, raise your taxes, and can spend a lot of money. You gotta be careful with this stuff. Oh, yeah, imagine Lubbock together. That's what the name. Thank you, Texter.
The Chad Hasty Show, a presentation of the Texas Town Square Media Network. The views and opinions expressed during the Chad Hasty Show are not necessarily the views of this station staff, management, advertisers, or Town Square Media. Broadcasting from the great state of Texas, this is The Chad Hasty Show. News and views with a Lone Star perspective. You can sound off during the show by sending Chad a text at 806-680-2790. That's 806-680-2790. Or call in at 1-800-687-0790. Now, here's Chad Hasty.
Welcome back to the Chad Hasty Show. Hope you're having a nice Monday. An enjoyable Monday out there. Much to get into in this final hour of the program. Including your phone calls and your text messages. You can text in 806-680-2790. We're going to start getting into local elections. That's right. Local elections beginning tomorrow, when we will have Lubbock City Councilman Steve Massengill on the program. He's running for mayor, and so we're going to start having candidates on who are running for local office. And if you are a local candidate, if you're running for office, doesn't matter where you are, and if you can hear my voice, congratulations. You are invited onto the show. Reach out to me, chad@kfyo.com. That's chad@kfyo.com. Or you can call Nick, and Nick will get you in touch with me, and we will schedule you a time to come on and talk to the voters and let them know why you should be elected to the position you are running for. So we don't just invite our folks running for state and in federal office and all that kind of good stuff. We invite the local guys on too to talk about their campaigns, and so that begins tomorrow when we have Steve Massengill on the program. And I think there's a bunch of people running for mayor in Lubbock, so we're gonna have a lot of those mayoral candidates on the show, I'm sure. Joining us on the phones, not only to take a look back on the primary elections that we had, but also there's still news every day in Texas politics. There's news. Our good friend Scott Braddock, he covers it all over at quorumreport.com. Scott, happy Monday.
Happy Monday, Chad. How are you?
Doing well. How are you doing?
It sounds like, I'm doing great. Sounds like folks are doing well in West Texas, and they're getting ready for those local elections. Couldn't be more important, and I always tell people in the local elections, and this counts in state-level elections, too. I mean, you saw that we had just dynamic, amazing, huge, robust voter turnout. Oh, wait a minute. No, we didn't. So actually the fact that we didn't makes the point, and the local elections, you see even lower voter turnout, right? It does mean that for the people who do pay attention and do vote, that your vote basically means that much more.
Yes.
Right? I mean, you as a person, as an individual, you have a higher percentage, of the overall say in the local and state elections than you do in, say, the presidential election when everybody votes.
Yep.
So do it.
Absolutely.
Pay attention to these interviews. Pay attention to what Chad's covering, what we're covering at quorumreport.com, and you'll be covered and you'll be ready to go.
I mean, even in some of these primary elections, we've seen where there are ties. We see where somebody will win by 3 votes. Every vote matters. Every vote matters in these campaigns. Scott, just kind of overall, an overall look at what you saw during the election returns. Were you surprised by anything? What are just your overall thoughts from primary Tuesday last week?
Not particularly surprised. After traveling the state, as you know, during the weeks leading up to the primary election, when I was talking to you, I was checking in from places all over Texas. Right, I was in Beaumont, Port Arthur, where the speaker is now in a runoff. I was out in Abilene, up in DFW, down in Houston, San Antonio, and everywhere in between. And seeing what was going on the ground, it was a flurry of activity. The governor, the attorney general, and the lieutenant governor actively campaigning against some of the Texas House Republicans. And I didn't even mention the ag commissioner on his rhino hunt, which of course we've talked about here. And he said that, I think he said on social media, Sid Miller said that rhino hunting season has been extended. He's talking about the runoff elections, and we'll see here. It seems like for Miller and Paxton, that their candidates did not do as well, and I think that's because for a few reasons. But the main reason probably is that they cast such a wide net. I mean, Paxton, of course, was going after people who voted to impeach him in the House, and that was nearly 70% of Texas House Republicans. He was not going to beat all of those people, or even a majority of those people. Lots of his candidates lost, although not all of them. There are some examples you can point to where he was successful. Of course, the governor had the highest rate of return. I guess the highest rate of return for the money he was spending. He certainly had the highest rate of successes for those candidates that he was targeting, because, as you know, his target list was pretty narrow, right? He was just going after those Republicans who did not vote his way on the school voucher, school choice question. And in fact, really interesting, Chad, he didn't even he didn't really even go after all of them. There were 16 Texas House Republicans who were, up for re-election. We did have some retirements out of the 21 who voted against him, but of the 16, he only targeted 10. And, he was able to defeat some candidates. Some of those candidates are headed to runoffs, and I saw where, some folks are trying to portray it as some giant earthquake, that in Texas politics, and that now, school vouchers are for sure going to pass. I would say that it's still a long way to go on that. I think you would probably agree it matters a lot what the actual school choice or school voucher proposal would look like, and I do think that these runoffs are going to matter big time for the way that plays out, and the November general election is going to matter for the policy outcome of all this, because it is quite possible that Democrats are going to pick up some seats in the fall. So some of it might be a wash for the governor, but I would say that anybody who doesn't recognize that he had a pretty good night last week is fooling themselves. I mean, but look, think about the difference between the way Paxton was campaigning and the way Abbott was campaigning. Paxton was doing some rallies, Abbott was doing some rallies. Paxton was not spending money on his candidates because he, quite frankly, compared to the governor, he doesn't have any. The governor basically took $6 million from one contributor and used it in these races, in those against those candidates who he was displeased with, and so his endorsement for candidates came with a lot of money. I mean, you can't overstate just how much money was flowing into these districts. I mean, some of these incumbent House Republicans saw as much as $1 million or so spent against them just by the governor. That doesn't count the allied organizations, the PACs and super PACs that were spending money against them. And so in some of these, especially in some of these smaller rural areas, Chad, it was wild to see, if you turned on television or turned on the radio, as you know, you could click that on and you would see or hear ads that were, just attack ads running against certain people that might as well have just been on a loop over and over again against some of these folks. And, the level of dishonesty that, in this campaign, we've talked about that. I think that it's really, to the frustration of a lot of folks. Then, the history is always, written by the winners. But to the frustration of a lot of folks, the governor and his allies on school choice are trying to paint this as a mandate for school choice. I would say that two things can be true at once. One is that, yes, the governor did have a really good night and moved things in his direction on school choice. But, in traveling the state and seeing what was said, by the governor at his rallies and looking at what was said, on those television ads and the radio ads and everything, digital ads and everything else, I can't read this, and just fairly, I can't read this as a mandate for school choice because of the way that these candidates were defeated. And we talked about it, that the governor went just really hard against Republican incumbents, calling them weak on border security, saying that he couldn't trust them when it came to border security, even though these are Republicans who voted with him 100% lockstep about border security. So that part of it was really dishonest, but at the same time, it was really effective.
Well, and we heard from State Rep Stan Lambert last week on, I think it was Wednesday, that we heard from him, and he brought that up, that very point. Of course, he won his reelect, or at least his primary. Yep. He won that that primary. And then I was going to ask you about that, and not necessarily to put you on the spot here, Scott, but when you compare a Drew Darby race, Stan Lambert race, and then you look at Travis Clardy, out more in East Texas. What was the difference, do you think, between those races? Was it the money by the challengers that, because, you had Liz Case challenging Stan Lambert out here, and she got some money rolled into her campaign. The governor went out to Abilene to cheer her on. Drew Darby had Stormy Bradley running against her. She got the endorsements. She had some money. What do you think it came down to?
A couple of big differences that I would point out. You mentioned Travis Clardy out in East Texas, who lost by a significant amount, and he had more money spent against him maybe than any of the other Texas House Republican incumbents. Texans for Lawsuit Reform came out strong against Clardy, and I think they were accused often by the Ken Paxton crowd of being behind the impeachment. You remember that? Yeah. And TLR, and I'm not saying that they were, but it is interesting that Clardy opposed the impeachment, and TLR probably spent something like $3 million against him. I think he's one of those incumbents that TLR's never been fully happy with, and they probably saw their opportunity because the governor was against Clardy. But I would also say that the Trump endorsement in some of these races, and of course, Trump was playing a factor in those races, like Stan Lambert's race. But it also mattered when Donald Trump's endorsement was made. So a really good example is in the speaker's race down in Beaumont, Port Arthur. You remember that Donald Trump came out against the speaker early on, pretty early on, and I think that really scrambled the board for the speaker. As I traveled around the state, it was absolutely the case that there were voters who would tell you, and this happened in Lambert's race as well and some others, there were voters who would tell you that they maybe planned to vote for Dade Phelan or maybe planned to vote for Stan Lambert, but then they heard that Donald Trump had endorsed the other person, and they would change Trump's endorsement could change their vote and change their mind for them, and then they would vote for the challenger instead because Trump had told them what they ought to do, had made an endorsement. There aren't a lot of endorsements, and I'm including the governor, the lieutenant governor, the attorney general, Sid Miller, et cetera. I'm including all of them in this. There aren't a lot of endorsements that can actually change a voter's mind about a candidate if they had already kind of made their mind up about that race. But with Donald Trump, they did. So if you compare the speaker's race on that point to the Lambert race, you had Donald Trump come out for Liz Case really late in that race, right? Trump's endorsement didn't come out until I think it was the first day of early voting. And so, when I had visited Abilene probably about a month before that, it felt like it wasn't even a real race, that Liz Case almost had no chance at all. And then, of course, as you know, it tightened way up in that last 2 weeks after the Trump endorsement. And so I don't think we can overstate how just important it was to Republican voters around the state when they would see that Trump was in favor of somebody. They would just go for that person. And we talked about this a little bit previously, but it is something that I think some of the analysis out there has really missed. I think, some of the Austin establishment, if you will, some of the Austin chattering class, I think has been I think has been, I'm included in that sometimes, but I think some of us have been maybe dismissive of the power of that endorsement in some of these races, because I think, it's not wrong to think that people might ask, hey, what does Trump even know about any of these races? Does he really know who Stan Lambert or Drew Darby or Dwayne Burns? Does he really know who any of those people are? Well, I think the answer is obvious that he does not know anything about those races, but I don't think a lot of voters get that far. I think that they see that there's an endorsement there. They like Trump, they're going to go with Trump, and that's all there is to it.
Yeah. The lieutenant governor has, among many, have called for Dade Phelan to go ahead and just drop out because, just because. I think their reasoning is the other challenger in that race has endorsed Covey. So if you do the math and add those two together, there's just no reason to have an election. I don't see Phelan acquiescing in doing that.
No, I don't either. Look, I think the speaker is loaded for bear. He's ready to try to win this race. It's an uphill climb for him for sure. I mean, look, the lieutenant governor's not wrong to say that the math would at least seem to be against the speaker. And look, there is a reason that historically that the reelects for someone who's an incumbent in the legislature, that it's a very grim picture when an incumbent gets into a runoff. Historically, you only have about a 6 or 7% survival rate for incumbents if they're in a runoff, and that's for incumbents in both parties. Over many years, Chad, and so it can look like there is no point to it, but I would temper that by saying that in 2022, just 2 years ago, the first election cycle in which Dade Phelan was the speaker, and when his political operation was working to reelect incumbents around the state, in almost all of their runoffs in that year, in 2022, Dade Phelan's operation was, you might remember this, was successful. Right, I mean they lost almost none of their incumbents in the runoffs, which was really almost unprecedented. And so his team does know how to win these runoffs. I think in talking with some Republican operatives here in Austin, they'll tell you that runoffs. There's mainly two things that you need to do to win a runoff in general. What you need to do is, number one, remind people when the hell it even is. People don't know when runoff elections are, right? This is coming up at the end of May. Even I have to check my calendar and go, when is it again? And I do this for a living, watch all this stuff. And two, just make sure that the people who voted for you in that first round get out and vote again, that you get your people to the polls. It's really a turnout question. It's not really a persuasion question. And, at this point, after so many arguments have been made and all these high-profile endorsements have been made, the arguments about who's the better candidate are basically over. And what you need to do is really excite your base and get them out to vote. I think that, for the speaker, the thing that would really be detrimental for his campaign and would maybe spell the absolute end for him might be if Donald Trump personally visits Beaumont, Port Arthur between now and the runoff and holds a rally there, like at an airport hangar, and just tells people they need to get out and vote for David Covey. I could imagine that being really terrible for the speaker. But as you know, the speaker has millions of dollars in the bank. He's got the resources to get it done, and he's also going to be, doing his best to send, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, or even millions of dollars to those incumbents who are in runoffs. Because look, it is one of the jobs of the speaker to support the Republican incumbents in the House, whether they're opposed by the governor or the AG or the lieutenant governor or whoever else. The first standing order of the presiding officer is to protect the House, protect its members, and if the speaker doesn't do that, they find it really hard to continue to be the speaker if they're able to come back. And so there is a lot of talk about whether, Phelan's toast already, as speaker, even if he's able to win his runoff, whether he can still continue to be the speaker. But in talking with folks here in Austin over the last week or so, since all this went down, the consensus seems to be that, there might be those who view him as weaker because he's going into a runoff, but he did get 44%, with basically the entire Republican world almost aligned against him. And in so some ways you could say that, that's more of a sign of strength than anything else. So I wouldn't count him out as far as maybe still holding the gavel next session.
Yeah. Scott Braddock, tell folks what they can find over at quorumreport.com.
We got it all covered for you there. We have gotten through this first round of voting. We're going to head to the runoffs and a whole lot more for you there at quorumreport.com.
Very good. Scott, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Chad. Talk soon.
That's Scott Braddock, editor of quorumreport.com. We'll be right back.
Concentration, slip away, 'cause your baby is
The Chad Hasty Show can be heard all over West Texas, weekdays from 5 to 7 p.m. Tune in on News Talk 95.1 and 790 KFYO in Lubbock, News Talk 940 in Amarillo, News Talk 94.7 and 1470 KYYW in Abilene, and in Wichita Falls on News Talk 96.3 and 1290. The Chad Hasty Show. Make it a part of your drive home, weekdays from 5 to 7 p.m.
I'm Ryan Seacrest. First responders are people who stand for a greater purpose. They will be there for you when nobody else is, to help you, your family, your community. This is their selfless promise. This is their sworn duty, to protect, to serve, to help. When you call 911, first responders show up now. Let's show up for the people who show up for us every day and every night.
Go to firstrcf.org and make a difference today.
YO.
little ditty about Jack and Diane. Two American
All right,
kids
welcome back to the Chad Hasty Show. Quick segment here. As we went a little extended there with Scott Braddock. You can send in your thoughts on the text line 806-680-2790. Again, that's 806-680-2790. We mentioned earlier just, that we're going to start having local candidates on. And even Braddock bringing up, hey, it's important to pay attention. It's important to pay attention to, city council races and local elections. These matter. Very few people vote in these elections. How about this? Abilene, they're going to cancel their upcoming general election as council members run unopposed. The city of Abilene will vote Thursday on the cancellation of the city election. Two of the incumbent city council members running unopposed will therefore be officially reelected for another 2-year term. It'll save the taxpayers around $60,000. Now, there's looks like they're still lining up for the school board elections, but as far as the city council goes, no election to be held in the city of Abilene. No one running. I guess everyone in Abilene very happy with the city government there. We'll be right back on the Chad Hasty Show.
The Chad Hasty Show, weekdays 5 to 7 p.m. Sound off during the show by sending Chad a text at 806-680-2790. Today's markets from the Texas Department of Ag.
Well, howdy, neighbors. Texas feeder cattle auction reporting prices steady to $5 higher. Cattle futures were mixed. April live cattle futures unchanged at $187.60, but March feeder cattle futures down 95 cents, closed at $248.25. May cotton futures were down, closed at $95.06. March wheat futures up a dime, closed at $6.18 a bushel. March corn up a couple of pennies to close at $4.28, and March soybean futures down 6 cents, closed at $11.65 a bushel. March soybean meal futures down $4.20, closed at $337.10 per ton. March Class 3 milk futures down a dime, closed at $16.47 a hundred. April crude oil futures down 8 pennies, closed at $77.93 a barrel, and the Dow Jones is up 46 points, closed at 38,769. And that's Market Roundup from the Texas Department of Agriculture. I'm your commissioner, Sid Miller. And remember, friends, Texas agriculture matters. So,
the news and talk of West Texas. News Talk 95.1 and 790 KFYO. Don't you forget about Chad at Chad Hasty Radio on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and on your radio. Now back to the Chad Hasty Show.
Welcome back to the Chad HT Show. Appreciate you being out there. You can send in your thoughts on the text line 806-680-2790. That's 806-680-2790. Here's how just absolute crazy some of these never Trumpers are. David French, who he thinks he's a better conservative than you. Writing for the New York Times, why Haley voters should support Biden. And remember, this is a never Trumper. This is David French. He's a never Trumper. He thinks he's a better conservative than you, but he's a never Trumper. And his argument is basically, you've got to support Joe. You've got to support Joe Biden. You got to get on board with Joe Biden because he's not the one who's going to ruin America. Right, the same arguments that we always hear, the same arguments we've been hearing from Democrats for years now about Donald Trump, that Trump is going to be the one who ruins the country, that Trump is going to be the one who brings down the democracy, that it's going to be Trump, that if you care about America, if you care about freedom, if you care about the founding of the nation, you'll go with Joe. Even though he's the guy who's ripping down America, ripping down the foundations of America. And his party that is ripping down the foundations of America. Joe's also been out apologizing on using the word illegal. The Washington Examiner with a story out to President Biden's apology for calling the Georgia nursing student Laken Riley's alleged murderer an illegal. Illustrated two different major dilemmas for his re-elect campaign. The most obvious is that worrying about the correct terminology for describing someone believed to have murdered a U.S. citizen itself exemplifies Biden's largely disastrous approach to the border. It also revealed the degree to which it's going to be difficult for Biden to bridge the generation gap within the Democrat Party despite a lifetime of chasing its center of gravity. Most of the reviews of Biden's State of the Union address noted the president's fighting spirit, including his exchanges with congressional Republican hecklers. The barbs on entitlement spending cuts are canned lines at this point, quips that have worked for him previously. His back and forth with Marjorie Taylor Greene over Riley was more or less spontaneous, although it was likely to some extent that he had been prepared by the White House for the GOP lawmaker to bring it up. It contained three problems. One is that Biden mispronounced Riley's first name. The second is that he described her as having been slain by an illegal, a term no longer used by portions of the Democrat base. The third was that he asked about the homicide committed by legals, presumably referring to Americans. The first and third problem likely further to inflame voters' outrage by Biden's feckless handling of the border, but the third generated immediate blowback from within Biden's own party, especially the Congressional Hispanic Caucus was forced to stand down. He told Jonathan Capehart on MSNBC, quote, "I shouldn't have used illegal. It's undocumented." Illegal is the word that came out of Biden's mouth because it was an acceptable term for most of his career, including all 36 years he spent in the Senate. The phrase illegal immigrant wasn't banished from the AP until 2013 when Biden was 70 and his second term as vice president. Remember, this is when it changed, folks, was during the Obama administration. We've talked about this. And the Democrats continue to change the language, and it gets further and further away from illegal alien, illegal immigrant, undocumented migrant, undocumented worker. Now, what was the last term they used? New arrivals was the latest term that the White House tried to put forward. Illegal is fine. Using the word illegal is just fine. What people should be outraged about, and what I think should be highlighted by the Republicans moving forward, is that the Democrats did not give a damn about the American who was killed. They weren't outraged about that. You have not heard any Democrat be outraged that a U.S. citizen was brutally murdered by someone who was not supposed to be here, by someone who was not supposed to be in this country. Call them whatever you want to. They were not supposed to be here. And they brutally murdered a U.S. citizen. Now, this isn't the first time it's happened, and it won't be the last time, and it'll probably get worse. Knowing that you have a lot of liberal DAs who are just letting people go, knowing that we have a wide open border with people who we just allow in, that we have flown in to different U.S. cities, it's going to get worse. If you don't have a gun, if you're someone who doesn't carry a gun already, you probably should. I've been a long time backer of having a concealed carry permit. You need to have one. You want to do constitutional carry? That's fine. But when it comes to crossing state lines, when it comes to traveling, go ahead and get your license to carry. I've got mine. I used it on Election Day when I showed my ID to vote. Or I guess during early voting. When I showed my ID to vote. I showed my license to carry. It was fun. It's going to get bad. It's going to get worse in major U.S. cities across this nation. And I think most people know that. I think most people realize that. But again, what should outrage people is that the Democrats outrage towards the word illegal. That's what made them mad. That's what got them angry. Is that Joe Biden used the word illegal, and that dehumanizes this animal who killed a college student, who so badly disfigured her skull she was almost unrecognizable. That didn't outrage the Democrats. The Democrats weren't outraged that happened. Congressional Democrats got mad at Joe because he used the word illegal. This is how the Democrats feel about you. This is how the Democrats feel about the United States. I don't give a damn what Joe Biden calls the murderer. He's a thug. And he should be put down. Use whatever language you want to. But you have people in this country who are murdering our citizens. You have people in this country who aren't supposed to be here, who are attacking our police officers in this country. You have people in this country illegally who are raping, who are child molesters. They're not supposed to be here. And the Democrats don't get mad about that. They don't get mad about the crimes that are committed. They get mad if you use the word illegal. That is a mean term, and we need to apologize to those. Joe Biden was forced by the Democrats to apologize to this girl's killer. He didn't apologize for getting the girl's name wrong. He didn't apologize to the family. You know who did apologize to the family? You know who met with the family? Well, that was Donald Trump. Donald Trump met with the family. Joe Biden has not met with the family. So this is what's disturbing about the Democrat Party. This and much more. But this is one of the things that is truly horrifying about the Democrat Party, is that they don't care about what is happening in America. They don't care what's happening in our cities. As long as you use the right language, they're fine with it. They don't care. They don't care if this country is torn apart. As long as you're using the right language and the language they approve of. Doesn't matter if it's factually correct. They don't care about that either. They just want the nicer, kinder, gentler language to be used. The language that won't offend people coming over here and doing bad things. And listen, I'm not telling you that every single person coming across illegally is going to be a rapist, a murderer, or a thug. I'm not sitting here telling you that. I've said many times before, I'm sure there are some great people who are trying to get here, but there are also a lot of bad people who are trying to get here too. A lot of bad people who are trying to get here and take advantage of the United States. 806-680-2790. When we come back, your phone calls, your text messages, and much more.
The Titan of Texas Talk Radio, Chad Hasty.
Talking with newsmakers and about the issues that matter to you. The Chad Hasty Show, weekdays from 5 to 7 p.m. Chad's show is also digital with the Chad Hasty Show podcast. The Chad Hasty Show podcast can be downloaded on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, and the Radio On Demand page at KFYO.com. The Chad Hasty Show, all across Texas during your drive home, weekdays from 5 to 7 p.m.
A tornado is on the ground. You're at work, your spouse is at a meeting, the kids are at 3 different schools. Power and cell are out, and your home is inaccessible. Now what? Have a preset meetup plan. Share it with everyone in your family and practice it. Know the emergency plans at work and school, too. Get ahead of what's ahead. Be informed, make a plan, build a kit. #TexasReady. Go to txready.org for more information.
And Buck Sexton, weekdays at 11 a.m. on KFYO.
All right, welcome back to the Chad Hasty Show. You can send in your thoughts on the text line, 806-680-2790. Let's see. Chad, that guy that said support Joe Biden is likely saying support your local drug dealer. Or is like saying support your local drug dealer. Sure, he may be a nice guy, makes convenient local deliveries, even there when needed. But what he brings you is long-term problems to the user and to the user effects and longer-term societal issues with continued use after the user starts to abuse the substance. Democrats like getting people hooked on their message, just as a local drug dealer, the gaslighting, the hope of future makers be paid with programs, and all to hook into people to keep their power. And that's what it's all about. Power. Having power over people. That's right, Eric. It's all about having power over people. That's exactly what they want. You see all these campaigns by Democrats giving power to the people. Right? Have you seen that slogan before? Power to the people. Giving power to the people and Democrats. No. Well, what the Democrats want is to have power over you. That's why they want to take away your guns. That's why they want to take away your rights. That's why they want to take away so much. That's why they want to take away open borders, or excuse me, the borders, and have open borders. They want illegals to flood into some of these different states. They want power in these congressional districts that are losing people, going to southern states, going to more conservative districts. And the Democrats want illegals to flow into their congressional districts so that way they'll have more power at the end of the day. It is all about power. And eventually what they want to do is have these folks who are in the country illegally, they want them to vote. They can't get them to vote in the federal elections yet. Can't get them to do that. But they in some areas, they're allowed to vote in local elections. But still, for many of these state reps, for many of these congressional leaders, as long as their congressional area is getting flooded with people, well, that means more money. That means when redistricting comes around, they can see where people are. It's not residents. It's not citizens counted by the census, counted by redistricting. It's people who live there. And so that's again, more reasons why the Democrats are just absolutely fine with wide open borders, because they're going to go to their districts. They're going to go to their areas. (806-680-2790). You can weigh in. Hey, don't forget you can download the Chad Hasty Show podcast. Always available via Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and more. This story coming out just a little bit ago. Nation's intelligence chief telling Congress the world remains a dangerous place. That's right. The world's a very dangerous place. And, hey, let's not forget about that wide open border, too, because that is absolutely making the world a more dangerous place and making the United States a more dangerous place. There's going to be more talk about the growing threats from China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, among others. But yes, when it comes to the border, the wide open border, it is making America less safe. It's pretty evident. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Hey, there's still some sunlight out there. That means you can do stuff outside. You can enjoy the outdoors a little bit more. So enjoy it while you can. Stay safe, stay healthy. God bless you all. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 5 p.m.
The Chad Hasty Show, a presentation of the Texas Town Square Media Network. The views and opinions expressed during the Chad Hasty Show are not necessarily the views of this station staff, management, advertisers, or Town Square Media.